This photograph of Samuel Beckett, I mean, it's magnificent and probably one of the most famous literary portraits ever taken. Beckett, at the last minute, as sometimes happens, tried to cancel the shoot. So the photographer, she was furious and she waited outside the stage door. When he came out, she kind of doorstepped him. 5 frames. All good, but one, an iconic masterpiece. She got it done. She brought home the bacon. And that photographer's name was Jane Bown. And here's the strange thing. I mean, it's hard to believe it actually happened this way. But my career only really began when she got hit by a car. Jane spent decades photographing portraits for The Observer. She photographed everyone, politicians, musicians, performers, writers. But the remarkable thing was how simple her method was. Just black and white film, natural light, usually a small Olympus camera. She did have a Rolleiflex, but rarely used it towards the end. No lighting rigs, no assistants, just an extraordinary instinct for people. The shoots were over in minutes. Very little direction. Nearly always f2.8 at a 60th. And when she was starting to get what she wanted from her subject, she would say, "Ah, there you are." And the Beckett portrait illustrates this lightness of touch. She's flying, working quickly, the light ever changing. No fuss. In the contacts, there's only 5, but you can see her searching, scrutinizing, watching his expression. From the outside, it might have looked kind of strange. A tiny, demure young woman photographing one of the most intimidating writers in the world. But actually, Jane was a tiger. There's no way you can have a career that spans 6 decades by letting people push you around. When she was asked about being among the mainly men, it's quite a macho environment in the press pack, she used to say, "My elbows are as sharp as anybody's." When I was a child, my dad, who'd been an art director in advertising, used to tell me when I said I wanted to be a photographer, look at the byline, notice who the good photographers are. I started to realise I was seeing her name again and again. Later, when trying to get assignments at The Observer, she was where I wanted to be. The picture editors were Nick Hall and later Jenny Ricketts. There were a lot of us snappers hovering around the magazine, hoping to get a job, competing for scraps from the picture editor's table. I'd gone in with my folio, managed to do a couple of simple commissions without screwing them up. And then one day, the phone rang. Jane had been involved in some kind of a road accident and was out of action for a while. She was meant to be photographing Jacques Lang, the French Minister of Culture. Would I do it? I jumped at the chance. For that shoot, I attempted to copy Jane's style. I thought they seemed to like what she was doing, so they wanted more of the same. I did use my Hasselblad as opposed to her using 35mm, but I shot black and white. And it was essentially a sharper, higher resolution pastiche of Jane. And I realised I'd made a mistake. I was missing an opportunity. I decided to go rogue. They liked my picture and gave me another, but this time, medium format, coupled with cross-processed colour film, ring flash, studio lighting. I had an assistant. I went loud, shouty, graphic, completely different from Jane's quiet, thoughtful portraits. The magazine really liked them. It was in the era of Britpop. It was a moment. and the pictures seemed to work in that context. The phone didn't stop ringing. I'd come into the office and be invited to discuss up-and-coming shoots with the editor. I mean, this is unprecedented. Photographers tend to kind of be tied to the picture desk. It's very rare that they get feted by the upper echelons of an establishment like the Observer. For the following couple of years, I had an extraordinary run of portraits for the Observer. One week it was Demi Moore, next week Martin Scorsese, then Jeff Goldblum, Kate Blanchett. I made hay when the sun shone. It was an amazing time, and I ran with it. Jane was still working, just not shooting the main portrait for the magazine. The thing about her was it wasn't really about technique, it was about people. Her childhood had been difficult. Her mother was unmarried when she was born, and there would have been some stigma back in those days in that scenario. She was largely brought up by aunts. My childhood also had a measure of dysfunction, and it's my contention that this can help. It can actually be a positive thing when dealing with the egos of the famous. An anxious child learns to read people and develop a kind of hyper-awareness, perhaps useful when later in life you become a celebrity portrait photographer. After the war, she was demobbed from the Wrens, and her Aunt Iris gave her £50 to buy a Rolleiflex. And that really started everything. The Observer became her home, and her colleagues kind of family. Apparently she even washed her hair in the darkroom sink. In the brilliant documentary 2014 by Luke Dodd and Michael White, we'll put a link under this video if anyone wants to watch it on Amazon or whatever. There's a really tender interview with Richard Ashcroft of The Verve. He says that he felt a sense of love and connection when he was photographed. And he also describes her as a punk. And she certainly did things her own way, ploughed her own furrow. A complete one-off years later, and I finally get to meet her properly. By then, sadly, she was in a wheelchair. And it was around this time that Polaroid film was being discontinued. And several photographers, including me, were given Polaroid cameras for a feature in the Observer to celebrate the film and the format. So alongside my pictures of my kids, including Fred, I photographed Jane. And afterwards I gave her the camera and she took a Polaroid of me. She asked where I live, and I said, Holcombe Rogus. It's a tiny village in Devon. And complete fluke, she knew it. Her Aunt Iris had lived there, and he's even buried in the graveyard of the church. And strangely enough, Jane lived in the same village as my aunt, Sarah, Alresford in Hampshire. All in all, a kind of strange and rather lovely coincidence. In a way, I've always felt slightly embarrassed that my rather flashy, showy, vulgar ring flash pictures temporarily replaced her simple daylight portraits. But the car accident turned out to be just a temporary pause, and she continued documenting the British culture for decades. Actors, musicians, writers, politicians, and even royalty. When Queen Elizabeth died, the portrait used by the Observer and around the world to announce her death was Jane's photograph, which somehow feels exactly right, appropriate. But if you really want to understand Jane Bown, you go back to this picture. Samuel Beckett, 5 frames, no lights, no fuss, pure photography. Just a small camera and someone who knew exactly when the moment had arrived. Jane used to say she wasn't taking photographs. And I agree with this. She was finding them. And nobody, I don't think anybody quite found them quite like she did.